Jimmy Murphy here with the Garden Report on Ice on CLNS Media, and I'm joined right now by NBC and TSN hockey analyst Pierre McGuire. Pierre, how you doing?
Very well, Jimmy. Good to
see
you.
Happy Thanksgiving. And Pierre, you've done this game, this Black Friday game, so many times. What does this mean to you, not just as an NBC analyst, but as a hockey fan?
I coached in it twice, too.
No.
When I was with the Hartford Whalers, so yeah, I remember.
Here in the old Garden?
Well, in the old Garden, not in this
Wow.
place. Right in front. I like it. I think it's a great honor. It's a great tradition. The fans are awesome here in Boston. I think the biggest thing is the Bruins have accepted this, kind of like the Detroit Lions in football. They know they're always going to play Thanksgiving. I think the Bruins know they're always going to play on Black Friday, the early game. So I think it's really a special tradition.
You see the players getting prepped up. You're down here on the bench. Do you sense an extra oomph amongst them for this game?
I do. You know, it's interesting. I saw David Backes. He skated this morning. I saw Ian Cole practice for Pittsburgh. I saw Brad Marchand this morning. All the guys, even the guys that are hurt, they're here early. They want to be part of it.
For sure. We're at the quarter point of the season here, and this is usually a time when people can gauge what you got with a team right now. The Bruins have, as expected, kind of been up and down right now. Obviously, Don Sweeney has put an emphasis on the future. If you're him right now, how do you handle the season going forward?
First of all, if I'm him, I'm really excited about the young players I have in my organization, and that's not counting Wiley Sherman or Jake Zaboral, or Zach Sinishin, or Ryan Donato at Harvard. They've got a plethora of young prospects in Boston that are going to be very, very good players. I'm excited about the development of the young players, obviously on defense. Everybody knows how good Charlie McAvoy is. Brandon Carlo continues to evolve. I think Kevin Miller is one of the most improved players in the league. Kevin Miller's really gone to another level. The development of Kudobin and goals has been really good, Jimmy. So if I'm Donnie Sweeney, I'm probably really excited about the future of my program.
Is it tempting, though, when you're in a market like this where there's so much pressure, obviously with the Patriots winning so much, that puts pressure on the other teams to succeed and go far in the playoffs? If you're GM, how do you balance that without mortgaging that future you just referenced?
I think one of the real positive things for Donnie right now, the Patriots are really good and the Celtics are really good, and because of that, they're going to eat up a lot of the attention. Okay. So there's not nearly as much focus on what you're trying to do. Everything you do is positive. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to panic move and make a move because you have to match their expectation. So I think it's really smart what he's done. Again, I would guard a lot of those prospects. Those prospects are really, really good down the road. And I think the Bruins have done as good a job or better than most teams in the league when it comes to developing players internally. They've done a really good job of that.
One of the negatives, unfortunately, you referenced Kudobin there, but the other goalie, Tuukka Rask, has had a rough start to the season. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of trade chatter now around Boston. First off, can you really trade a goalie with that contract mid-season? And second off, do you think it's worth doing that? I mean, why not just see how things unravel? If Kudobin's playing well, let Tuukka find his game. You agree?
Well, you can trade anybody at any time as long as they don't have a no-movement clause in their contract. In terms of Tuukka, he'll get it back on the rails. I really believe that. I've known him a long time. I know the type of competitor he is. I think maybe it's good for him to have somebody pushing him right now. And Anton's been really good, and I know his teammates are really excited about what he's been able to do. I watched Anton Kudobin play, Jimmy, and it reminds me of 2011 and Tim Thomas.
I knew you were going to go there.
It really does, and I'm really impressed by the way he's handling.
And Tuukka was supposed to be the starter that year.
He was, and it's funny about that.
Timmy took over in Prague.
Timmy took over in Prague after the Bruins went to Ireland. Exactly right. I remember getting a text from Mark Recchi, who was playing for the Bruins. He goes, "I think Tim Thomas is going to be our goalie." I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty neat."
By the way, you mentioned Mark Recchi. He's here with the Pittsburgh Penguins today. Just the guy he was. He went in the Hockey Hall of Fame. We didn't have a chance to talk about him. Just your thoughts. I know you're good friends with him. Your thoughts on that?
I'm so proud of Mark, the way he's handled himself as a pro. 22 years in the NHL. He's a fourth-round pick coming out of Kamloops. I never forget the first time I met him was in Vancouver at the draft. We took Jaromir Jagr that draft. That was a pretty good pick, 5th overall. But what I remember the most about Mark is how intense he was. He played on a line that first year I was in Pittsburgh with Kevin Stevens and John Cullen, so there was a lot of Boston flavor.
Yeah.
And it was called the option line because all three players were playing out their option that year. John eventually got traded to Hartford for Ronnie Francis and Al Samuelson. Kevin stayed with us and signed, and we eventually traded Mark away to get Rick Tocchet and Kenny Reggett and Shel Samuelson. Pretty good trade, too. But the thing I could say about Mark that really matters the most is phenomenal teammate. He wasn't a good teammate. He was a phenomenal teammate. And if you were to talk to Patrice Bergeron or Brad Marchand or Zdeno Chara, they would tell you the same thing.
You must be reading my mind. It's the Irish, Irish thing here, right, McGuire? Murphy?
At least you have hair.
Finally, I mean, you mentioned Patrice Bergeron there, and that was going to be my final question. A guy that he obviously heavily influenced, Mark Recchi, that is. Just your thoughts on him, and is he one of the best two-way players of this generation, if not ever?
Oh, Patrice, absolutely. The only one I could say might be a little bit better would be Guy Carbonneau. you know, and he won 3 Selke trophies. Nobody will ever do what Gainey did in Montreal. He basically created that award for Bob Gainey. But Patrice and Guy Carbonneau are pretty similar, and I think Guy was one of the best defensive forwards in the history of the National Hockey League, so I have Patrice right up there. You know what's interesting about Patrice? I remember when he was drafted in the 03 draft, and then I remember when he made the Bruins.
Yep.
I remember when he made the Bruins as an 18-year-old, and the game that put him over the top was a game in Montreal. I happened to be calling it.
I was there.
And it was unbelievable as an 18-year-old how good he was. And then the 05 World Junior was really his coming out party. And I'm going to date you here, Jimmy, but he played on a line with Sidney Crosby and a guy by the name of Corey Perry. And believe it or not
a bad line.
No, Crosby played the wing. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, good stuff. Listen, Pierre, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, always a pleasure. That's Pierre McGuire here on CLNS Media, the Garden Report on Ice with Jimmy Murphy. We'll talk to you later.